Now they moved to the courts as we're challenging some of the decisions that we did make without their consultation. This is where we are. Talk about DR Congo. We are not in good books with DR Congo as it stands right now, especially with the issue and regard to the stand of what is happening with the M23 and also the deployment of our forces in DR Congo at the end of the day. Talk about Sudan. We've been, of course, accused of being or leaning on one side and being biased. So will all this, even as we're talking locally and how Raila will actually be gagging for this particular bid, will we get the requisite support from this region? That is where we want to begin. But let's just begin with you, Honorable Makali, especially on this spot. We've seen with the current regime also things have not been faring well diplomatically around from some of the statements that are tripping off the ministers' tongues, especially regarding Rwanda and how it's an autocracy that has not really gone down well with President Kagame. Now we have 10.23 billion shillings we've lost because of our spat as well. Let's begin from there. And how does that also import on the candidature of Raila Odinga as a AU commissioner? Chair?
Actually, there has been concerns about our foreign policy as a country, and more so with our neighbors, we seem to be engaging in a lot of inter-country trade. You know, like when you look at what is happening locally, you find we do a lot of trade with Uganda, Tanzania, and the other countries I've mentioned. And in a situation where you have that strong kind of relationship in terms of trading, it's always very good that you manage the way you relate also politically and in another area. And I think that's where we seem to be having challenges, as you said earlier. We have issues with the Congo, we have issues with Tanzania in terms of, you know, these trade barriers normally would be applied in a situation where you want to sort even a political problem. And I've seen that happening a lot, where people seem to have a political problem, then you go to the trade side to tighten some situations so that it's like we will teach you a lesson so that you behave. And in the process, then we end up losing a lot. And at times, actually, I remember at one point, even the issue of Uganda, where we were saying, Uganda has always been a very key partner to Kenya in terms of trade. If you look at the exchange, what we export to Uganda and what we bought, they have been a very major business partner to Kenya. So in a situation where you're in that scenario, then you need to manage your relationships well. And I think those experts who deal with matters, foreign issues or foreign policy, they have been saying we need to manage our foreign policy in a different ways we are doing it. So I agree with you, we seem to have that problem, and what will happen is, so long as we are not relating well with them, business will suffer. That's all. It's just like even locally, when you don't manage your business environment well, what suffers is the small businessman and everybody else. So this is not unique to that other level. So you continue to see more of what you are seeing here, that we've lost this number of imports, our exports are getting reduced. And you remember at one point we were going, where I was telling you, when our business environment is not working very well, like what is happening now, there are so many of our investors who have actually moved to our neighboring countries for purposes of producing from there and exporting from there back to Kenya, so that Kenya becomes only a consuming country and not a production country. And you know, when you become a consuming country and not a production country, then you lose big, because it means jobs are being created across the other country, and you're only buying the final product. And you can, those of us who are economists, we always talk about what we call the forward and backward linkages. So than just employing one person, when you push an investor to Uganda and they set a farm there, they buy inputs from that country, so than just employment, the other benefits come with setting a factory in an area. And we all see it around. People would be buying, for example, if you look at a company, a cement company here, we have inputs coming from the same country, transporters in that country also have business. So you lose big by, and that's why you see now there's that conflict, that some of our big investors have moved to neighboring countries. And when you see now, when you see us losing those big investors, then you start now straining the political relationship between countries. And don't be surprised about we might get things getting worse than they are. Because this is happening a lot. Basically because any serious businessman or any serious investor does investment purpose of making profit. So in a situation where your profits are getting reduced day by day, then you must think of a way of salvaging your company and also making money because you are an investor. So I totally agree with you. This is an area we need to discuss seriously. I don't see what will happen to it, but now with that kind of scenario, then you bring out the issue of now will these guys be able to support the candidature of Raila? That's what we're saying. And more so where they're being lobbied by the same country, where they seem to be having strained relationships, that could also be an issue.
Right.
There might be a need to have a diplomatic approach to it, so that either you send people and they sit and talk and try to lobby that even though we have these small problems as neighbors, can we for this particular position, can we bury our small differences, and once we achieve this, then we can come back and go back to our small differences. And it could have negative impact. But let's be careful.
Yes, and it goes back to where I was telling you that human nature, we're very avatistic. We always go back to, that particular instinctual value that God has endowed us with. We always think about ourselves. So at the end of the day, they will be looking at through the prism of how have we been relating with Tanzania. And so there's also this big brother syndrome that is always hanging over the East African community, especially with Kenya, that we seem to be running roughshod over these other countries because we take ourselves to be economically having the wherewithal in these other regions as it is.
Dibal, you're asking a pertinent question. But go back to, if you looked at the interview that Raila had, I think with The Nation, there are some facts that we probably do not know or still think we know, and we just hear them. That his decision to seek this seat and the support did not actually come from our government, that it actually came from outside, and now the government has latched in. That's an important thing to think of. But it is your question is pertinent because if within the East African region we are not in harmony, there are issues that we are not agreement with, then obviously when we have a candidate, we can't be sure that that candidate will get the support. More so that if you looked at it, what has been coming out is that AU seems to be saying that these things should go into regions. So it should be Central Africa, Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, and this time it should be time for the Eastern Africa. My hope is that we do not know who the other candidates are. That's something we have not asked ourselves. And so if there were to be another candidate from the East African region,
I think there's a candidate from Somalia as well.
Yeah. So then that would actually be an important point. That's why I'm saying we shouldn't all be so worked up that Raila is gone, Raila is gone. It's a process. So that's something that is of concern. But the bigger picture is how do we relate within East Africa? We are talking of East African community. I'll tell you, historically, I know that the East African community we had before independence was actually a much stronger union than this. The movement of people was so freely. The currency was one. The services, the East African common services, were just one. So people moved around freely. And what really upsets me is that even when we send people to East African Legislative Assembly, we tend to be sending people there to fight each other, like we want to kind of petition, what do I get out of it? Instead of actually working to bring this union into a union that is easy for the citizens. That's what actually the citizens want. The East Africans, if you ask them, would love to work and move everywhere, the professionals, but we are not doing that. So when we have these issues we have, like the issue with Tanzania on those trade issues, the issue we have with Uganda on oil, the issue we had with the DRC, first of all, on our forces that are there. And even earlier, there was some issues that were not really nice that were mentioned about farming in DRC, making it look like the DRC people themselves cannot do the farm. We can use. Those are issues that we should avoid. We should have harmony. And in my view, the East African community should work towards a unit where everything is, even trade should be free, movement of people should be free. We should even be working towards a common currency. But you are right, we have to look at it. What does it mean for what Raila is going for?
So you've taken us through history, and I wanted just to ask you as well, going back to the independence time and trying to fortify the East African community. Was Kenya a big influence in the fragmentation of the East African community?
Yeah, Kenya was a big influence. In fact, I think Tanzania was even keen to delay its independence so that the three East African countries could get independence at the same time.
No, I'm asking
the unity.
I'm asking
it
about
was
the fragmentation.
It was a part of
the demise of East
the
African.
The demise of Kenya.
Kenya contributed
Kenya
largely.
contributed to that demise.
And it still is also contributing largely to what it is right now.
The disharmony.
The disharmony.
Where we have a legislative assembly, but it is not fighting hard to create one unit. It is what is there for me. We go there. I agree with you that we should do better. And if historically, you know, even when it came, the distribution of the assets, Kenya wasn't fair when we had the distribution of the assets of the East African community.
Most of the assets were domiciled here.
The East African Kenya Airways was actually East African Airways. The railways headquarters was here. So it is actually in our interest.
Back to what I was telling you.
Yeah.
As a human nature, we are very...
interested.
And it then brings in what I was saying. You must think of the others, because if you concentrate on yourself, it will hurt you in the end.
All right. Honorable Bakali, I wanted just maybe on the sidelines to talk about the issue of the 78 billion shillings that the government is seeking to pare down on the expenditure. As it's being put right now, what is the import of that? And we've seen the 168 billion shillings, the headroom that is being created that for more borrowing. But we're paring down with the 78 billion budget cuts. This is coming from the National Treasury, which has proposed 78.6 billion shillings in budget cuts for the fiscal year ending June 30th as part of the Exchequer's efforts to rationalize spending.
Rational spending. You know, Dibal, we've said many times in this show that if this country wants to go far, we need to manage our expenditure side of the equation. And anytime I see any attempt to reduce expenditure, it's very encouraging. Because the thing is, when you look at the budget items, the itemized budgets, you realize some things you can easily do without them and achieve the same budget outcomes, the expected budget outcomes. So in a scenario where somebody's talking about reducing expenditure by 78 billion, I have not looked at what items are going to be reduced. I hope this is not going to affect development, but recurrent. If it is recurrent, 100% support. But if it is development, I will be concerned. Because we have said there's been this habit where when we are doing our budget, like now we have set the budget process, we always make sure that we are above 30%. The recommended 30% development, 7 recurrent. Because that normally it's like that's the agreed position that if you want to be prudent in terms of management of public resources, make sure that you allocate about at least 30% to development, 7 to recurrent, so that the recurrent services the development. But over time, what has been happening is, as you move towards the end of the year, through supplementary budget or some of these revisions you're talking about, we keep on reducing the development budgets. So that at the end of the year, you might find we are not even eating 20% of the development. We budgeted for 30%, but in terms of actual implementation, we are below 20%. That is not good for the country. So in a situation where we are reducing that, this recurrent, this is the way to go it. But what now raises more concerns, the issue now that you are reducing expenditure, but you're then opening more doors for borrowing.
Indeed.
Because, all of us, we agree that we have overborrowed in this country. We have been borrowing so much to an extent that if we don't manage our public debt, and that's now becoming a topical issue in this country, that you can actually find yourself in a debt distress. We have always been at the edge, almost getting to debt distress level. But
too close for comfort.
Almost too close
Yeah.
to debt distress level. And I think with that kind of situation, we really need to be very careful as a country. What do we borrow? What do we borrow for? And how do we use that borrowed money?
When you talk about development, because I see also from
Yes.
other reports that
Yes.
especially with the construction of roads, that has been sort of really toned down.
Yes.
That we'll not see in this particular...
Yeah, the new roads.
Yeah, the new roads completely,
Yes.
or maybe just maintenance of it. But now development on roads as well, that has been pared down. What does it really portend?
Now, you know what has been happening is we have so many stored projects, projects which were started, and they got stored because of financing.
So financing, and then we get
Yes.
also contractual
Yes.
breaches.
Yeah, that's the
that
thing.
we have to pay
So
billions.
So the reasoning has always been, instead of starting a new road, why don't you provide for resources to complete what is stored, either 20% stored or 30% implementation or 80%, so that we because at the end of the day, if you decided to start a road, it means we've done all the feasibility studies and confirmed it's important to the nation. So the issue has always been, don't start anything new before you complete what is ongoing. And I remember the last time we were doing the budget, the pending bills for roads was almost amounting to a whole trillion, almost to a whole trillion. So we are saying, why start new roads instead of doing the road? And that's why you see the push now is that complete what is in place before you start a new road. And it looks like it has been like government policy. The government seems to be buying that. And that's why you see at times they are borrowing and saying we are borrowing to complete what is pending. But at the same time, so long as you borrow, you will repay. You have to pay back. Anytime you borrow, you must know, unless it's a grant, anything called a loan will always be paid back. And what is happening mostly now is, like you saw now with the Eurobond, even though we are saying we are lift, we are going to pay, but we have borrowed
To pay.
to pay.
You borrow to pay.
Which means we are only postponed the problem of
Yeah,
of
we're
pay-
just kicking the can down the road.
of pay.
Yeah,
You're just kicking the can to
Down-
move forward.
down the road.
But one day, real down on you that we must pay.
We must pay
So
with increased interest rates.
Obvious. And this is what we are saying. So while you might think you have a huge relief now, I'm telling you, the future is still very.
It's still a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, it's taking.
So we're not really out of the woods.
So we need to be very careful. And any loan we take, and like anytime you take a loan to pay another loan, then you don't even talk about any investment, because it's just you're borrowing from Peter to pay John.
All right.
And nothing happens.
I'm surprised that the legislators right now, they are not even taking keen interest in this issue of debt ceiling. There was a bill that was on the floor of the House. I don't know if it reached the third stage on the previous parliament. No, Bunyasi Sakwa's bill.
No,
I'm talking about the Bunyasi of the public.
That one died.
That one died.
That one died.
Was it a good bill? Why was
it? It was a good bill, but now we have an arrangement that before we discuss the budget, actually we have to discuss the debt management strategy. So the BPS, the budget policy statement that is coming, I think it's already in.
Yeah, it was
the first thing we're actually going to do is to discuss the debt management strategy before we actually discuss the budget policy statement, which actually determines our expenditure. So the issue of debt is something that I agree with Michael. He's an expert in this. But we're borrowing, we are paying, and some of the projects are stalled. Now, if a project is stalled, the intended benefit you don't get. The obligations, some of the obligations you have to pay more. If it was interest, you are still paying more interest. So obviously, we are not getting down. And to me, he is the expert in this, I think the distress that Kenyans are feeling now, to a large extent, arise from the issue of the debts. Because we are told a lot of taxes are being levied, but people are not seeing the benefits. And the issue we are being given, we are sorting out the loans that we got. But as we are sorting out the loans that we got here, we are also actually taking more loans. As he was saying, we are taking loan to pay a loan. All you are changing is the face of the person who is asking to be paid, because you still will have to pay. So I think if we can go down and reduce our expenditures, he's saying, on current, and this is one of the issues. If you look at this national dialogue, the area that actually there was disagreement on, which is the area of the cost of living, the proposals that were there was actually on the management of the budget, areas which we needed to cut down, which the Kenya Kwanza government said that is something they deal with as their own. But apparently, it is still a problem.
So how then do we account, even when we're talking about all these budgetary cut downs, a firm like Kenya that had to pay SBI 6.19 billion shillings for contractual breaches.
Yes.
You as legislators, how then do you also make Kenya accountable for these breaches? What really constituted to this particular breaches at the end of the day? Because that is an eye-popping figure we are losing, just like that, because someone has actually not honored the contractual agreement and obligations at the end of the day. So they pay 6 point whatever shillings, billion shillings, and then we just, butt our eyes and move on.
That's what I was saying.
So we just say, okay, it happened. No one is held accountable for the breaches. We move on with life. And then we take more from the taxpayers. But that's what I'm asking you as legislators. When something like that happens, then what is the accountability track? So that we find out where was these breaches, and can someone be held accountable for breaching of this?
We actually have this. We have these committees, the oversight committees, that look at all those, the infrastructure committees.
I have not seen any appearing before the committee, if there is a public investment committee or oversight.
No, they do appear, and actually recommendations are made. And what normally happens that the committees themselves, when they make recommendations, they make to other agencies of government who should actually take action. So that is where it actually ends. Maybe the only step we have never taken is to sanction a minister. For example, we have never done that. You have made recommendations that EACC should investigate this, prosecution, somebody in charge of prosecution should take up this matter, and it ends that. But the parliamentary committees do actually call these people in and find out what is happening and make recommendations. Then the other agencies, actually, it's where the problem is. They never take up. But now we are having another problem. I don't know whether we have noticed that a lot of people who are taken to task, the DPP is now coming out and trying to pull out a lot of cases and actually going to court to terminate cases. And they're having problem with the judges saying, no, you have brought the case in, you cannot come and terminate it. Now it is for the court. I don't know whether you have seen that. If you looked at the case of the Arrow Dam and so on. So there are many things that you look at. Even the judicial system will come into an issue like that. So when these agencies take these matters to court, how far do they go? Because that is the only process you have. You recommend that this individual needs to be prosecuted. The person in charge of prosecution takes them to court, and then when it gets to court, no action takes. So it's a whole system that you need to look at.
But you know, the other thing is, the reason why we're having so many pending bills in this country is because of the challenges of the exchequer release. You know what is happening when we are doing our budgets? The assumption is always that our revenue projections will be realized, so that the amount you expect to collect, you will collect the money, and then you'll be able to pay. Now, what has been happening in the past is, on the basis of the budget, departments will go ahead and procure these services, contractor will move to site, contractor will invest their own money, and then when it comes now to the payment, where they have been issued the certificate to be paid, you find Treasury has not released the money to the departments. So what happens? The contractor research site. Now, hoping the money will come, the money doesn't come at all. So you hit the end of the financial year, you have a contractor on site, you have not been given the exchequer list to pay the contractor, and your hands are tied. So over time you accumulate a lot of bills. And I think that's what is happening. But there are also other reasons. There are cases where also, like the county government, what they're doing is they are overestimating their own revenue, the one they collect at the source, at the county level. So when they overestimate, they do their budgets based on that overestimation. So you find their budgets are no longer realistic. So when it comes to actual implementation, you had planned to collect 100 million, you end up collecting 50. So that means your projects worth 50 million, which are not funded. So those are some of the challenges we are facing. And I think with the time we need to start coming up with the realistic budgets. Like now when you look at the projections which have been given here, they are saying they will expect to collect 2.5 trillion locally. That's our own revenue as Kenya. But now you'll be surprised, the current financial year, we are done 2.4. I don't know how much we have collected, because every time they are reporting we are short by this kind of billions. So at the end of the day, it's the whole issue of balancing the figures. And that's why you see, you might want to implement, but you can't force a contractor to continue implementing when you are not paying them. So this thing gets stored, you get pending bills. It's actually a very complicated issue, but with the time, I think we'll be getting around it. The only way is to reduce our expenditure or improve the money we are collecting locally by using the tax administration systems so that we collect more. And that's why you see they are running to the saloons, the barber shops, so that everybody now needs to come to the tax bracket so that we collect the targeted amount and implement our programs.
But isn't that the truth? Because we have high-end saloons here, salons, so to speak, and we have also the barber shops where I know maybe you go and get your cut for
that's true.
Almost 5,000 shillings. I hear some other people together with other equipments that comes with the massage and all, and there's no tax remittance that is coming from this.
But don't forget those guys are paying for the licenses to be there, and those licenses already it's a tax component. So to me, I think what we're talking about is the informal arrangement, where you find there are so many of them who are not in this high end, normally in the slums and in
but
the small.
For the licenses, it's a one-off.
Yes, it's a one-off.
It's a one-off.
But
So
it's an annual thing. So all said and done, and some don't make that much money to be taxed monthly. So if you're able to get what you get,
you saying now, if I go to a restaurant and of course they have their license for the whole year,
yes,
but you still have to pay that tourism revenue collection which is almost double even maybe the tea you're taking.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah, at the end of the day. So can that also be put?
To me, the broadening the tax base is not a bad thing. In fact, to me, it would be better you have more people paying tax than a higher tax. Because like that, I think you get more money in. The issue is, like now, what we are in Kenya, people feel that people are paying taxes, everything has gone up, but they are not feeling the relief that they would expect, either in the services. Even if you look at education, we are saying we have sent money out, but he'll tell you, a lot of kids still come to us. There are still levies in school. People go and say,
maybe we're waiting for the law of delayed gratification to work. For now, you see it later.
No, how much later is it? How much later is it?
For now.
It's almost 2 years.
These are the choking points for now.
No.
But of course, the exceeding beneficial effect will be coming much
But
later.
in Kibaki era, it was almost immediate. I don't know how it happened. It was actually almost immediate. There was immediate, people felt immediate relief. Services were working. I remember I was in the health sector. We actually were getting more money. We were able to actually buy drugs and so on. Now, why isn't... The other thing I think is happening is that I don't know how management, just managing what you have. Because there's a lot of talk on what should be done. If you take services like education, you say we are going to fund universities through individual students. The logistics of that fails the whole system. So nobody feels it. Now you come and say you want to do e-citizen collection of money. It may be a good thing. You may collect a lot of money. But the infrastructure you need for everybody to put that money in the e-system and then it goes back where you want, that's the failure of that infrastructure. Now we are saying we are going to register everybody into NHIF. All the people who are there, we assume they don't exist, we register new. The logistics you require. So I think sometimes we may, he's an expert in this, we may actually be having internal incompetencies that are making it impossible. You know, you can have food in the kitchen, but if people in the kitchen are not good cooks and are not organized, no food may come out. But the raw materials, the ugali may, the unga may be there, the chicken may have been there, the mboga may be there, but nothing is coming. I think we may also be facing that problem. That the money we have in there, is it being managed properly? Just what you want to do with it. Yes.
All right. I want us just to follow up as we're running up the issue of the frauds and NABIC academic frauds, where the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is investigating 161 cases of falsification of academic documents by various departments and but is also state officers. And details from the commission shows that 6 cases have so far gone to conviction. Some 20 cases are still pending before court, while investigations into another 8 have been